everybody. Thank you so much for taking time to meet with me today. I'm really excited to have a special guest. Her name is Harriet Cabelly, and she is a clinical social worker and a positive psychology coach. And today we're going to talk about the work that is needed in order to empower ourselves and position ourselves for the healthy relationships we want going forward. So we're super excited to have you, Harriet. So,
hi, thank you for having me, Nicole. Good to be
here.
Harriet,
you are an actual clinical social worker. Hi. So you are a clinical social worker and therapist and a coach, positive psychology coach. Could you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do in each of these areas so we can understand exactly what that is?
So just quickly, the difference between coaching and therapy is, just so your listeners know, therapy is more, is deeper. It goes more into the past, into a lot of what our issues are, have been. Coaching is more present oriented. It's more concrete. It's more, how do I move from point A to point B? So it's less about the past. It's less about deep issues, and it's very, action oriented steps.
Right.
And that's, in a nutshell, that's the difference between therapy and coaching. So I am a licensed clinical social worker, an LCSW, and then I also got my certificate in positive psychology, which is what it's really the foundation of how I approach my work. Positive psychology being a branch of traditional psychology, but it focuses on how do we live well, as opposed to regular psychology. Traditional psychology has always been from the emphasis of what's wrong, of the pathologies. And positive psychology is more, let's look at the ingredients and what goes into living a good life and living a rich and a well life. It's not to the exclusion of problems. We're not Pollyanna-ish, but it's more focused on there is good, everyone has strengths. Let's shine a light on those and help bring those more into our lives so we can function better.
Yeah, that's excellent. So the listeners to this video or these videos are those that are overcoming domestic violence and narcissistic abuse. So what are some of the tools you think that they could use in order to put themselves in a position of, instead of, we come out of a narcissistic relationship or abuse feeling very down, depressed, victimized, disconnected from ourselves. What does it take, in your opinion, to come out of that state and reconnect back to the best and highest version of ourselves?
So that's the conversation for the whole length of our talk together, right? That's the loaded question. And
yeah, it's a very loaded.
I want to say that my area of specialty is overcoming adversity and grief and loss. Now, when we think of loss and grief, most of the time we think of grief over the death of a loved one. But in reality, grief is just a reaction to any type of loss that has significance to us. So the loss of a marriage, right? We have high expectations. We go into a marriage thinking, this is it, I'm with the love of my life. And then trouble starts and we find ourselves split up. That's a devastating loss. And that does entail grief. No different than a loss is an illness, a disability. So there are a lot of different losses. And the reaction to a loss is grief. So when a marriage is over, there's going to be grief feelings to work through. And it's not so simple where we just say, oh, move on, move out of it, get over it. It's been a month. It's been 2 months. He's gone. Get a life. It doesn't work like that. I mean, our society would like it to, and we're very quick on a fix, take a pill, feel better. But it's really about growing through it and going through it and giving ourselves permission, first and foremost, giving ourselves permission to feel the loss, to feel the grief, to feel the pain, and to sit with that and not just look to, I'm not supposed to feel this. What do I do? Should I take a pill? Should I take a drink? Should I go overeat? Should I go over shop? we have to, it's like giving ourselves permission to feel. And that's so important, because it sounds counterintuitive, but when we allow ourselves to go through these feelings of pain, that's what enables us to come through it more whole and more healed. We don't run from it. We go through it. We put ourselves into the pain almost, because it will eventually soften and we will work through it. So that's really first and foremost is very crucial. And that's all the inner work that we have to let ourselves do and acknowledge. I'm upset, I'm disappointed, I'm angry, I'm every negative emotion in the book, just acknowledging and allowing ourselves to feel it. It's natural and normal. When we fight against it and we push against it and we try to push it away, it comes back to haunt us later anyways, in all different ways. People get addicted and they do all kinds of acting out behaviors. So just giving ourselves that permission to feel lousy, to feel what we feel, is very important. That's like the
so
first
good. And yeah, I noticed too, I've been doing some research on trauma and how trauma affects the body. And there is a natural process that is supposed to take place when we feel especially intense emotion, kind of like animals in the wild when they, they go into the fight or flight, they're being chased from a bear or whatever, then the fear leaves, then there's this natural process where they let it out, they do the shaking thing and they let these emotions out of their body and it regulates them back to that relax and recovery stage. But with us as humans, we don't do that. We go through the super heightened emotions, then we suppress it, especially victims of domestic violence, because they're trained to not vocalize your problems or your feelings, to not bring up issues, because if you do, you'll be abused. So and we learn to stuff it. And with that.
And also because there's so much shame. There's so much shame attached to that. And what we do with shame, we silence it. And the more you silence shame, the worse it is. And that, who's the best speaker? One of the best people on this, Brene Brown, talks about shame and authenticity. And I mean, she has, YouTubes and books and all about the potency of what happens when we just push shame deeper in instead of just letting it out, because it's part of being human. But we have to first accept that within ourselves. That whole piece that it's not shameful. It's a horrible situation, and there are things that we can do about it. We don't have to remain stuck.
That is so nice. And that is huge, because when you don't feel like you have any options, when you feel trapped, when you feel stuck in something, you feel powerless, and it makes you feel overwhelmed, and it gives you no hope, and you feel horrible. And that's actually what causes all of these other diseases. We give up, right? We just keel over, accept this bad situation, and there's not much we can do about it. We go into a state of depression, anxiety, PTSD.
And the depression really comes from that sense of helplessness, like you said, and hopelessness. There's a concept by Dr. Viktor Frankl. He was a prominent psychiatrist in Vienna who went through numerous concentration camps. He wrote the amazing book, which I recommend for everybody, certainly people going through very difficult situations. The book is called Man's Search for Meaning. And he came out with this whole theory. It's called logotherapy, the therapy of meaning and purpose. Anyway, the point is, one of his major concepts is that we can choose. It is in our purview to always be able to choose. We don't have necessarily control or choice over what happens to us, right? So we can be victimized, but we always have the choice in how we respond to what happens to us. And if anything, I would love your listeners to just take that concept away and hold on to it tight. That is empowering, that It's not about what happens to us. It's about what we do and how we respond to what happens to us. So that helps us not maintain the victim mentality. Yes, people who have been abused, who have had any horrible things happen to them, perpetrators doing horrific things, they're victimized. They've been a victim to a horrible, horrible perpetration. But we don't have to stay in a victim mode. We don't have to stay in a victim mentality, because remaining in that mentality shuts us off from life. We're just giving over our power to the perpetrator and saying, look what you did to me. Woe is me. I have no life. You did this to me and I'm nothing now. Who does that benefit? The perpetrator, right? As opposed to saying, yes, I've been victimized and this is horrible. And that's the whole grief process. And I'm hurting and I'm in pain. And at some point we start to say, but I have control over how I can respond and begin to move forward and reclaim my life, because it's my life. And I still have responsibility to living a good life, even after something terrible has happened.
Right.
And he uses all of his experiences going through many concentration camps and seeing how there were those who just, that's it, give up life, or those who hung on and said, I can still own it. There are things I can do, even though I'm being starved and put upon, all the horrible things that went on at concentration camp. So that theory, that concept of we still always have a choice in how we respond. And Nelson Mandela is another beautiful example of that. He was in prison for what, 27 years? And he came out stronger than ever, right? So he was victimized by being in jail and imprisoned in a horrible circumstance, but he chose to use it in a different way to benefit his own life going forward.
I love it. So he took control of the situation and was able to make choices in his best interest and respond to his circumstances. I love it. So we were going to get into what that actually looks like. So a person just gets out of a domestically violent situation. They have been victimized, but it's over now. They want to recoup their self-esteem and their self-confidence. What practical steps have you taken, or what do you teach in your practice that help them to amp up that inner power, that inner, that strength? Yeah. How do you regain that strength after?
Well, first is what I said at the very beginning of our conversation, which is allowing for the feelings, just letting it be and sitting with it, and not trying to say, oh my God, I shouldn't feel this. And I don't want to repeat myself, but just the permission to feel, let's call it that. And then it's doing the inner work. So whether it's seeking out professional help, counseling, someone to help you go through this and help you cope on your journey. For some people, I mean, I personally think that is the route. I know when I needed it. I have a daughter with disabilities. I was also divorced. So through my situations that were very difficult, my adversities, I always sought out therapy. And I found that to be the most helpful, because not that they give you the solutions, nobody sprinkles magic sawdust and gives you the solutions, but they're on a journey with you to help and guide you as you're struggling, and to show you different options, and just to clarify things. And this is really important, to begin to own that we have to own and take responsibility for our part. Now, when I say our part, I don't mean that we asked to be abused or that we're responsible for the perpetrator abusing us. Not at all. I mean our part and our responsibility in our lives, in how we want to go forward differently, in what do we want to keep and what do we want to throw away. In other words, just owning our lives and taking responsibility. Again, it kind of goes hand in hand with not remaining a victim. Like for instance, when I was getting divorced, and I could really say also when my daughter was diagnosed with disabilities, I was in a terrible funk, and I was into the why me and all that. I'm not going to say nonsense, but I look at it now as nonsense, but it's really not nonsense. We go through this. And until I started to be able to really say to myself, okay, this lousy thing happened. My daughter was born this way. I'm ending up getting divorced and I never wanted to, and it's all lousy. What am I going to do with that? In other words, there were no answers to the why. There were no answers to the why. Why is this happening? Why me? That was where my head was at. Not everyone goes there, but that's where I went. Instead, the shift for me, which was really powerful, came to, you don't ask the why questions. Those are the human condition questions that we don't get answers to. Not while we're alive. Maybe when we get up there, someone will answer it. I don't know. But the better question to ask that will give us answers to light our path forward is how. So now that this has happened, how can I move forward? And what? What do I need to do? How can I strengthen my coping skills? What do I need to do to get myself to, and fill in the blank? So it's shifting the question from why to how and what. So when we ask a question in a different way, it can guide us towards finding the healthier responses. So how do I strengthen myself? How do I build my self-esteem? How do I empower myself to move forward? So those are the questions, the hows, right? So, I mean, we could give a whole list. You could start with the concrete. You exercise, we meditate, we start to build ourselves up and feel healthier. We start to create healthier habits. We build in a morning routine. We have a gratitude exercise. I mean, there's a lot of concrete things to do. But the key is we have to know what we're going towards. We have to know, what do we want at the end? We want to feel better. Yeah, but that's very genetic.
Yeah.
Generic.
We have to make a decision. Yeah.
We want to rebuild our lives. And how do we start? And those are baby steps. But I like to say we build from the inside out. We don't go running and saying, okay, let me see what I could buy. If I get a bigger screen TV, will that make me feel better? And if I get more chocolate donuts, will that make me feel better? Yeah, for the moment. But that doesn't cut it, because we just want more and more.
Right.
Starts from, it's the inner journey.
Yeah. So what was that? What was the process that you went through for your inner journey that led you to this empowered state?
So first of all,
we want to get, I think as women, yeah.
No, so first
as women, I think, yeah. Sorry.
Well, this is the technology, right? Go on.
I was just going to say, as women, that's what we're always looking for. It's like, how do I become the best version of myself? How do I have the best life I could have? How do I reach my fullest potential? We don't want to just suffer. We don't want to continue to live in abuse and less than what we really want. So what is it that we need to do in order to, or what is that inner work? What changes on the inside do we need to make in order to empower ourselves to get the actual lives we really want, supposed to what we've been just given, or what we grew up in, or what we've been dished out in life?
Well, I like to say, I don't want to use the word meditation, because sometimes people get scared or put off by that, but just as something concrete, the idea of sitting quietly is extremely powerful. We're very consumed with distractions and all kinds of external stimuli that take us away. And sometimes we want to be taken away because we don't want to feel what we don't want to feel. But we need to feel it, as we discussed earlier, but we need to hear our inner voice. And sitting quietly, or i.e. meditating, but don't even use it, just sitting quietly with no distractions in a calm little corner, even in where we live, in a space, in a car, wherever it is, taking some deep breaths and making that a practice every single day is very soothing. Some people say, oh, I have ADD, I can't sit still. But you know what? It's a practice, and you start with 2 minutes and you set your phone and you build up to 5 minutes and 7 minutes. And sometimes you start to look forward to that. I know I do. Exercising for me, when my ex-husband first moved out, and that was when I was in my late 30s. The first thing I did, I had a friend who came over and said, Harriet, I'm taking you to the gym. I joined a gym. I had never exercised. I mean, I'm thin, but I was doing it for health and for empowerment and feeling stronger about myself. Because, you know, when we feel good and strong physically, it does a lot for our mental state. Our posture does a lot. Our exercise and getting those endorphins going make us feel better. There's a lot to be said for feeling stronger physically. Helps our whole being. I can't emphasize that enough. So she got me, I joined the gym, I started exercising, and I did yoga. I started yoga. Yoga also opened me up to literally opening here, opening. So I could breathe, not like this, not contracted, not small. There's a lot of metaphors for this. Small, you know, someone walks into an interview. They walk in like this, they're nervous, they don't feel confident, or they walk in like this, standing up tall, even if they have butterflies in their stomach. It's a presence. And we start to feel the way we present. It's almost like fake it till you make it a little bit. But I can't impress enough the physicality of movement. I'm not saying everyone has to do yoga, but but just moving and getting ourselves physically stronger builds tremendous empowerment and self-confidence. And I've been doing it ever since. And I do it even more now because I have osteoporosis. But the point is, it becomes part of your lifestyle and it feels wonderful. You know, they say that cardio exercise, like a treadmill, running, walking, a trampoline, is an antidote to depression. And it could be sometimes worth more than that antidepressant pill because it's a natural, it's like a runner's high. You know, you could feel like I'm too tired to do it and you do it anyways. And by the time you get off, you've got that energy boost, and put that over time and it does a lot. So I'd say exercise, making quiet time where nothing is around, take out your earplugs, go for a walk without them, and just what comes in. And sometimes we don't want to know what comes in, so we distract. I'm inviting everyone to let it come in. Let it come in. That's the beginning of the healing process. The more we push it out, the worse it is for ourselves. Let it come in and we be gentle with ourselves. There's a whole piece of research on self-compassion. Kristen Neff has a beautiful TED Talk on self-compassion, how we have to talk to ourselves like we would talk to our friend.
Yeah.
With kindness, with gentleness, with understanding. That doesn't let us off the hook for anything we might have done wrong. We still own our mistakes, but we're human. And we got to talk to ourselves kinder, but we're not taught any of that.
Right. So true. So true.
I mean, there's so much here, you know, there's so much to unpack, but these are just a couple of things to push ourselves towards. But I really think the key is the mindset. It's how we view it. If we're going to view ourselves as a victim and we're going to remain that way, that's one way, and that ain't going to benefit us in the long run. If we view it as, yes, I've been victimized, yes, this is horrible, but I can begin to come out of it slowly and rebuild and empower myself. But that's a mindset. We want to believe that that's an option for us. We don't have to stay stuck and small. And he stripped away my self-confidence. Okay, it's still there. It's buried. We got to peel like a layer, like an onion. Peel away the layers and you'll get to your core again. But you got to get to the core by allowing for that outer healing to start. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you do that by feeling the feelings, right? Because once you deal with it, it goes away. So
yeah, there's an expression. I didn't make it up. I love it. It says, I think it may be David Kessler. He's a very famous grief therapist. You can't heal what you don't feel. It's beautifully simplistic. You can't heal what you don't feel. If you don't let yourself feel it, you don't know what you're dealing with. But when you know what you're feeling, then you can learn how to manage it. Okay, I'm really pissed off now. Well, what do I need to do to calm down? Can I jump in the shower? Should I turn on music? Should I go for a run? But if we don't know what we're feeling, because we keep pushing it away, then it's like a tube of toothpaste. It's just oozing out all over the place. So I'm screaming at my kids, and I'm screaming at my boss, and I'm having a fender bender because I'm so angry. So things, they spiral out of control. But if we say, I'm feeling really agitated now, what can I do to help myself in the moment? Even that, just to get a handle on it.
So true. It's emotional intelligence, isn't it? It's learning how to deal with our feelings, how to soothe ourselves. But we're not taught how to do that. Nope. So we have to learn as adults that it's okay to feel the feelings. It's okay to deal with it. It's okay to accept it, not to avoid it. We resist it, it grows, right? Like you were saying.
That's right. That's right.
So we confront it, we sit in it, and then we learn ways to cope with it, right? Learn ways to soothe ourselves. Just like a mother would soothe a baby that's crying. We know how to soothe our children. Yeah, right. We know how to soothe our children, but we don't soothe ourselves. We go grab a glass of wine or go buy another trip to Target, whatever it takes.
That's right. What a great example, Nicole. That's a great example. We know how to soothe our kids,
yes,
but we don't know how to soothe ourselves. And there's a psychologist, his name is Guy Wins. He's got a great TED Talk on emotional first aid. Again, we know how to put on Neosporin and a Band-Aid when we get a boo-boo, right?
Right.
But that's a physical boo-boo. And if God forbid you break your leg, you get a cast on it. You know how to treat physical boo-boos. You get a toothache. But when we have small emotional boo-boos or really big ones, we don't know how to do it.
No, we don't.
But we're taught to put a Band-Aid on, but we're not taught how to deal with when I feel rejected, when I didn't get the job I wanted, when this person broke up with me. We're not taught how to handle those kinds of feelings and what to do when we feel sad and hurt and rejected. It's emotional first aid. I really recommend people to watch it. It's great. It's called Emotional First Aid. It's a TED Talk. It's just so basic. It's so simple, but yet we don't think like this.
No, we don't.
Why? Why don't we think? We never give enough credence to our emotional and mental well-being. Everything's all to the physical.
It's so true. But that is changing. People are becoming more and more aware of how the emotions affect the body, because it really ends up having a physical component later. It does become physical.
Yep.
We're just now starting to make the connection in our society. And so
absolutely.
It is an exciting time, and it's important that we do pay attention to this, because we're suffering needlessly. We're picking up these vices that are causing huge issues in our lives and also our children's lives. And we're just perpetuating these issues over and over again. And so
right. And
it's
once
really
you pick
good
up a vice, once you pick up one of these vices, as you call it, you've now got two problems. You've got the original one that you're dealing with, and then you have the secondary one that you picked up as a coping mechanism, as an unhealthy coping tool.
So good. So the coping tools that you use to help yourself are exercise, meditation, relaxation. What other things have you used to help yourself deal with your own emotions?
So first of all, I love learning and I love reading. So I just read an exorbitant amount of all kinds of psychology books, and I take classes in self-growth and development and all that kind of stuff. But putting that aside, I think crucial is the idea that we reconnect with what are our likes, what matters to us, what's important to us, what do we value? Because I know as a parent, our kids are our first priority, and we kind of lose ourselves because parenting becomes first and foremost, naturally so. And we put ourselves on the back burner. So we kind of forget all of those things that made us up, you know, way before we became a mommy, we were a person. So
right.
kind of looking into what are some of those things that we really enjoy, that matter to us. They could be small things, they could be big things. They could be, you know, connecting to a cause, or they could be small things like, you know, I used to love photography. Let me take out my phone or my camera and take 10 minutes a day and start going outside and taking pictures again, because I used to like that. You know, little bits of joy to bring into our lives is very, very powerful. You know, we can all say, oh, I don't have time to take a class. I don't have time to take a vacation or whatever. But nobody can say they don't have 10 or 15 minutes a day. And yes, we could say it, but we know it's nonsense because we all spend that much time on social media and, you know, Facebook or whatever. So we all can find, it's about making the time and doing something that gives you momentary pleasure, because when you add those in over a week, it starts to bring joy. So you could put, they're called happiness boosters. And I have to say, I learned about a lot of this stuff in my positive psychology course. We would make lists, and I invite your listeners to do this. Make a list, free stream of consciousness, all things that you like that bring you pleasure. It could be from smelling lavender to talking on the phone, to reading a book, to going on an African safari. It could be, you could be dreaming it. It doesn't matter. Just writing down things that you enjoy, that you like, that you're passionate about, that you're curious about. And then it could be 50 things, 10 things. On my list, I remember originally I wrote putting my hands around a funky mug of hot chocolate and sitting down for 5 minutes with that. It was like, oh, delicious. And when you start to just think of how can you start to fill yourself, filling yourself with small bits is starting to reclaim who you were. Oh yeah, you know, I used to really like playing the piano. I used to really like listening to that kind. How come I haven't turned on music in a long time? Or, you know, and so it's reconnecting with who we are and some of the things that make us come alive again. We're exploring some of that. Doesn't that sound neat? You know,
love it.
In the midst of all the problems, who thinks about that, right?
So true. And whatever we starve starts to disintegrate, and whatever we give attention to starts to grow. So what happens is, as mothers and wives, put everybody ahead of ourselves, which is not wrong. I mean, taking care of the people we love is a good thing. We don't want to be neglectful. We don't want to, you know, be selfish. But when we neglect ourselves to the point that we lose ourselves, then what we walk around being is this person who is irritable, agitated, who's not your best self because you've been neglected. Right. So we have to carve out some time for ourselves so that we can fill up our cup, like you just said, and then we have this better version of ourselves that we're able to share with everybody else. There's more to give. We're giving at a place of abundance instead of deprivation. It's so good.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And the line, and I have one hanging over my computer. There's a line. I love quotes. It says, "You can't pour from an empty cup."
I love
it.
It's
so we can't give if we're running on empty. I mean, we all try to do it, and then what do? We end up stressing out and screaming and falling apart, and it's just terrible. But again, sometimes we have that mindset that, oh, I can't think of myself. Am I being selfish? You know, it's like when you're on an airplane, you have to put on your own mask first. So I'm not saying, you know, you take off and you don't, like you said, of course you tend to the needs of your kids and your family, but you got to insert yourself too. On our calendars, you know, this one's doctor's appointment, this one's here, this one's there. How about we pencil in our own selves? Gym time, Tuesday at 2. You know, class time, 1 hour. Walking time in the park. You know, we pencil us in too. First of all, it's a great role model for our kids. It shows that we value ourselves. And the idea that otherwise we're completely on overload and stressed. But that's a whole other conversation we could do on just how to manage stress, but not for now. But yes.
Yes.
But that's a filler.
Well,
That's
Harriet, yes, it's so great. Well, this has been very, very encouraging. The tips you have been amazing. If we could just do these, our whole life would shift, wouldn't they? And so this has been so helpful.
I want to give one more specific, because I think this is like probably the biggest of everything.
Okay.
It's called the 3 blessings. Every night or in the day, whenever, you write down 3 things you're grateful for. Now, we know nowadays gratitude is huge, and they have all kinds of gratitude apps, and everybody talks about, you know, the health benefits around gratitude, but it's very true. It really is true. Write down 3 things that you're grateful for each day. Have a little memo pad by your night table, or do it on your phone. And it doesn't have to be a big thing like, you know, oh, I moved out of my house and I found another beautiful house. It could be that, of course, but it could be, you know, sometimes people say, well, I don't have anything. Well, did you wake up healthy? That's something. Did you wake up with a roof over your head? That's something. So
true.
There's always something. And if you want to write the same thing every day because you're in a bad way, you write it every day. I woke up today. I put my feet down on the ground. I took a warm shower. Hey, that's a big deal, right? Some places don't have that. And then you move into other things. I sat with my warm cup of coffee today. I got to speak to my friend, and we had such a great conversation. I have a friend that I could call. So 3 things. It's called the 3 blessings. It's a shift. It starts to shift.
You know what I found out about gratitude? Yes, it's so true. There's so much benefit. What I've found in my own life is that, first of all, stress is difficult, right? But they found in studies that if you get a break in stress by shifting your mind to those things that you're grateful for, that you're able to manage stress a lot better. They don't know why it works, but it does. Right. The other thing is what you just said is you're shifting. Instead of feeling like your whole life is doom and gloom and you're focused on constant negative thinking, you're focused on positive things, and you're able to teach your brain to look at life from more of a positive perspective, and less about everything that's going wrong, which we have a right to be upset about. I don't want to diminish that, but it's not helpful, right, to sit around only looking at the negative. Like you said, making the best out of our situation at the time.
Because what we want to look at as the power of the and, to broaden our lens. Yes, there are issues. Of course there are. And there's also good stuff too. So during COVID, it was very rough. Nobody's minimizing that. But, and some people enjoyed cooking with their families. Some people enjoyed actually having dinner time with their families. Some people started playing more board games with their families. So it's not taking away the negative, it's broadening our lens and showing that it's not all bad. There are glimmers of hope, there are glimmers of light, and it's a wonderful coping mechanism also. Because it helps, again, it helps balance us out and say, you know what it's like? It's like the rose bush. You see the rose, you also see the thorns. So what are you going to focus on? You're going to stay away from the beautiful rose because, oh, I got to be careful. I don't want to get pricked with the thorn. Or you're going to say, yeah, the thorn is there. I'm going to be careful because I want to see that gorgeous rose. You know, so there's 2 things. You're going to have them both. So A, what are you going to focus on? And B, you're going to broaden. You're not just going to see a thorn. Yeah, the thorn is there, but so is the gorgeous rose. Let's not forget that. And when we have problems, we forget about the other things that are going well.
Right.
So a woman in an abusive relationship, it's horrible. And she comes out feeling horrible. But if her kids are healthy, that's the biggest piece of gratitude. Yeah, I'm going through hell and high holy water right now. And thank God my kids are healthy. Check. That's a huge gratitude. Write it down every single day.
That's so good. And they're safe and they're in a better space. Yes, I love it. So really quickly, I know that I wanted to ask you too, what was it for you that you feel like you had to put in place to, because I heard you're you're living in a very successful marriage. And that's so important to women coming out of domestic violence situation. They need to know that there's hope and that there's men out there that are still healthy and that there's opportunities, a very real possibility that they'll end up in a healthy relationship, but some work has to take place. So what was it for you what did you put in place so that you made sure you had different, you ensured your successful marriage and you found a partner that was a good match for you?
Right. Well, sir, first of all, we know there's no assurance in life, right? That's number one. That's a given. There's nothing certain in life other than what do they say? Death, taxes, and death. But putting aside that, I went into therapy because I wanted to get to know myself better, what I needed, what made me tick more, what my points of, what provokes me. Well, because I listen, we all have flaws. I mean, I have a temper. I'm a yeller. So that doesn't benefit me in any marriage, no matter what the other person was, right? It doesn't benefit me. Again, it's not even about the other. I'm working on me. I want, like you said, I want to be the best version of me. So I had to own up to some things and say, I got to work on myself. And then what is the kind of person that I think, again, it's still, we can't assure anything. In fact, they say second marriages, I don't want to be doom and gloom here, but second marriages have a higher divorce rate than first marriages because of, blended families, and there's more baggage. We bring kids. So it's not so easy, but certainly we've got to get to know ourselves. We can't just look out there and say, oh, it was him. Oh, it was the other person. They made me. It's because of them. And it may be 80% or 90% because of them. But if you want to be your best self and you want to grow out of the experience, because after all, once we have a lousy experience, the best thing we can do is grow from it. Otherwise, we will repeat it. So our growth is getting to know ourselves and what our issues are. What are our flaws? What do we bring to the table? After all, we picked this person, didn't we? What was in that, what was there? And that helps us maybe not pick the same type the second time around, because often we pick a repeat, looks differently, but repeat. So we really have to work on ourselves, get to know ourselves. And my answer to that is working with a therapist. I mean, that helped me. And I believe it's a little hard to do that on your own because you do need that someone a bit more objective, but the therapy, working with your feelings, journaling, all of that kind of stuff. But I think we really have to always look to grow and to own our part in whatever we're doing, even if it's our own responses. We could always do better. We could always be growing and changing.
I love it. Well, that is so great. Well, if you want to end up working with Harriet, she is taking clients for both her therapy practice and her coaching business. Like she said, the difference between therapy is digging into the past and really dissecting what went on in your life that got you to the place that you're in today and how you can deal with that. And then coaching is more present and action-based and goal-oriented to help you get from where you are to where you want to go, what actions. We like to call coaches masters of habit change. So we'll teach you the habits you need in order to get you from point A to point B. And so anyway, we will put the description of a couple of the links of the videos that you referenced, the book you referenced, and your contact information so that they're able to get a hold of you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I got a lot out of it personally, and I appreciate your time.
I hope there was some takeaways for your listeners. A few. Bye.
Definitely there was. Thank you. Bye now.